It started innocently enough. When I first moved in, everything seemed perfect. The neighbors waved politely, the streets were quiet at night, and I finally felt at peace. Then, one Friday evening, I heard it. The thumping bass line of a party next door. No big deal, right? It's Friday. Let them have their fun. I turned up my TV and went about my evening. But the music didn't stop. Midnight passed. Then 1 a.m., 2 a.m. By 3 a.m., I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was cursed. And let me tell you, there's nothing quite like the soothing sounds of shots, shots, shots to lull you to sleep. Little did I know, that night was just the beginning. The parties became a regular thing, every weekend without fail. The bass shook my walls, the shouting seeped through the windows, and my patience wore thinner by the day. I tried everything. Earplugs, white noise machines, even sleeping in my living room. But no matter what I did, I couldn't escape the noise. Finally, I decided to confront my neighbor. I knocked on their door, heart pounding, rehearsing a polite yet firm speech. They opened the door, red Solo cup in hand, and I said, "Hey, I live next door." The music's been really loud, and I was hoping you could turn it down a bit. Their response? A lazy smile and, "Yeah, sure. No problem." The music stopped for all of 5 minutes. Then it came back. Louder. Yes, the classic, "Sure, I'll stop in your dreams" maneuver. Things escalated. I started calling the cops, but by the time they arrived, the parties would quiet down, leaving me looking like the neighborhood killjoy. And then, the retaliation began. It started small. My trash cans mysteriously tipped over. My car tires deflated overnight. At first, I thought I was imagining things. But then, one night, I found a note stuck to my door. It read, "Mind your own business." Chills ran down my spine. I was scared, but I wasn't going to back down. I installed cameras, determined to catch them in the act. And that's when I saw it. Footage of my neighbor, in the dead of night, creeping into my yard, with a crowbar in hand. What was he planning to do? That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I called the police, showing them the footage. This time, they took me seriously. The neighbor was arrested, and as it turns out, he had a history of harassment and vandalism. I finally felt safe again. But the experience left a permanent scar. Looking back, I realize how fragile peace can be. It only takes one person to shatter your sense of security. So, the next time you hear a noise outside, or notice something strange about your neighbor, maybe don't ignore it. Or, better yet, invest in soundproof walls and a guard dog, just in case. When I moved into my new apartment, everything seemed perfect. It was cozy, affordable, and conveniently close to work. Best of all, the neighbor across the hall, Linda, was so nice. She introduced herself the day I moved in, carrying a plate of homemade cookies. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask," she said with a warm smile. And honestly, who doesn't love cookies and neighborly kindness? At first, Linda's kindness was a godsend. She watered my plants when I went out of town, helped carry my groceries, and even lent me her tools when I needed to hang up some shelves. But then, things started to feel a little off. It started subtly. Linda began asking small favors in return. Nothing too weird at first. "Can you grab my mail while I'm at work?" "Sure, no problem." "Can you watch my cat for the weekend?" "Of course." But soon, her requests became more frequent and more intrusive. One night, she knocked on my door at 11 p.m., claiming she'd locked herself out and needed to stay over. I felt bad for her, so I let her crash on my couch. But when I woke up the next morning, I found her snooping through my kitchen cabinets. "Just looking for some tea," she said with that same warm smile. At that point, I wondered if I should label my snacks not for Linda. From there, things only got worse. She began showing up uninvited, sometimes with excuses, other times just to check in. If I didn't answer the door, I'd find her waiting in the hallway when I eventually left my apartment. And then she started borrowing things without asking. My vacuum, my books, even my clothes. They disappear, only to reappear days later in odd places. Tell me, is it normal to find your own sweater hanging on your neighbor's balcony? Yeah. I didn't think so. One day, I confronted her about it. Her face dropped, and for a split second, her sweet demeanor cracked. Then she laughed it off, saying, "Oh, you're so sensitive. I'm just helping us share resources." That's when I started to feel like I was losing control of my own life. But it wasn't until I got a phone call from my landlord that I realized how far Linda had gone. Apparently, she had reported me for being a noisy and disruptive tenant. I was stunned. I barely even made noise. I worked long hours and rarely had visitors. When I confronted her about it, she denied everything. But that night, I checked my front door camera and saw her slipping a note under the landlord's door. The footage didn't show what was written, but I knew it had to be her. She wasn't just borrowing my things. She was trying to control my life, to isolate me, to manipulate me into thinking I needed her help. I finally decided to fight back. I showed the landlord the footage and explained everything. Linda was furious when she found out and left a chilling note on my door. "You'll regret this." But instead of waiting to see what she meant, I moved out within a week. Sometimes the scariest people aren't the ones who openly threaten you. They're the ones who smile while quietly pulling the strings. Have you ever encountered someone like Linda? Someone who hides their true intentions behind a mask of kindness? When I first moved in, everything seemed normal. Quiet street, friendly neighbors, a beautiful old house with character. But next door? That's where Tom lived. Tom was a DIY enthusiast. The kind of guy who watched one YouTube tutorial and suddenly thought he was Bob the Builder. At first, it was harmless. He'd tinker with his fence, patch up his roof, and brag about his home improvements at every chance. I thought it was kind of charming. I mean, who doesn't love a little can-do spirit, right? But then, one day, I noticed something strange. Tom was building a massive deck in his backyard. No permits, no professionals. Just Tom, his tools, and an alarming amount of duct tape. That's when the red flag started waving. The deck was just the beginning. Next came the treehouse, then a homemade fire pit, and then the chimney extension. Yes, you heard that right. Tom decided he could make his chimney more efficient by stacking bricks and sealing it with what looked like bathroom caulk. I tried to mind my own business. But one night, while relaxing in my living room, I heard a loud crack. I rushed to the window and saw a chunk of Tom's chimney crumble and land on the roof of my car. I stormed outside, heart racing. Tom was standing in his yard, staring up at the wreckage like he was admiring his handiwork. When I confronted him, he just shrugged and said, "Guess I miscalculated the load-bearing weight." "Oh, really, Tom? You think?" But the worst was yet to come. A few weeks later, Tom announced he was installing solar panels. I should have known it would end badly. One stormy night, I was lying in bed when I heard a horrifying sound, a mix between a thunderclap and metal screeching. I ran outside and saw sparks flying. Tom's solar panels had torn loose and were dangling by a thread, one of them crashing onto my roof. Worse, the loose wiring was sparking, threatening to ignite. I panicked, calling 911 as rain poured down, and Tom, undeterred, climbed a ladder yelling, "I've got this." The fire department arrived just in time to prevent a disaster, but they made one thing clear. Tom's DIY project could have burned down both our homes. It was a miracle we weren't all killed. After that, the city got involved. Tom was fined and ordered to halt all projects until further notice. But the damage was done. His reckless ambition nearly cost us our lives. Sometimes the real horror isn't in the things you can't control. It's in the people who think they're invincible. People who turn their homes into ticking time bombs. Have you ever lived near someone who just couldn't live well enough alone? Someone whose projects left you sleeping with one eye open? If so, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And if you're still here, why not join our little community of horror lovers? Hit that subscribe button and let's explore more chilling tales together. Because sometimes, the scariest things aren't in haunted houses. They're right next door.